Truth Seekers, welcome back. Zach here. In the time I've been investigating the South Carolina church shooting, some very common numbers have popped up. But another number that's been popping up is a number that seemed important in the recent Philadelphia train crash of May 12th, 2015. If you can recall, in that crash, it was said that the train was traveling 106 miles per hour. And if you haven't seen the image of the front engine car, this is it. 601, the reverse of 106, the speed the train was said to be traveling at. 106. In the recent church shooting, the first night of the reporting, CNN's reporting had this fire truck driving back and forth in this scene. And True Seeker, what I'm contending is that when we watch the news, we're essentially watching the same thing as a Hollywood movie production. It's a scene with actors, with props, with purposefully staged numbers in the scene, just like they do in the movies. And if this is new information to you, trust me, I am not mistaken. They are actively doing this. This fire truck that was just backing up with no sense to it had the number 106 on the side, connected to the speed that the train was traveling. And if you've seen my videos on the train crash, you know that the number 98 was very central, and that train crash was connected to the upcoming Pope visit on September 23rd. In the train crash, another number heavily coded was 98, and this church shooting comes exactly 98 days before the Pope's visit on September 23rd. So, similar numbers, connected incidents. Well, as I've been decoding the story, there's just been more and more and more 106. One of the victims is said to be this Reverend DePayne Middleton doctor. In Pythagorean gematria, the name DePayne Middleton doctor sums to 106. And down here, when they describe him, they say he's 49 years old. 49 is one of the numbers of Revelation, which all these stories are connected to. Recall the train crash was in Philadelphia, one of 7 churches in Revelation, in the final book of the Bible. Revelation's the 66th book of the Bible. South Carolina equals 66 in Pythagorean gematria. Anyhow, in their description, they put in parentheses a warm and enthusiastic leader. And a warm and enthusiastic leader in Pythagorean gematria sums to 106 with the S exception, 115. Both numbers with 7 numerology. Of course, the word leader equals 115. And this has a warm and enthusiastic leader. But really what I want you to focus on is the 106 it sums to. So Truth Seeker, I was looking at all this 106. I was noticing how they made a movie about a train crash starring Bruce Willis. November 22nd, 2000 it came out on, the anniversary date of the JFK assassination. The movie runs 106 minutes long. So I was going, okay, 106, 106, this can't be a coincidence. It's in the train crash. It's here in South Carolina at the church shooting. They're coding it into names. They're putting it in parentheses and headlines. I said, what is 106 about? Because Truth Seeker, until this, I had no idea what 106 might be about. So I put on my thinking cap, and I started thinking. And I said, oh, maybe it has to do with a meridian. So I wanted to look up the 106th meridians, east and west. And when I read about them, notice that it says the 106th meridian east forms a great circle with the 74th meridian west. And vice versa, the 106th meridian west forms a great circle with the 74th meridian east. Well, if you've been following my work, you know that this church shooting is all about 74. So here we find a natural pairing of 74 and 106 in terms of map coordinates. And notice that the 106th meridian east runs through Russia, China. Lots of focus on Russia and China lately with Crimea, Ukraine, hacking, weapons. Also, Truth Seeker, Notice that this meridian cuts through the Gulf of Tonkin, cuts right through the Gulf of Tonkin. The Gulf of Tonkin is where the false flag occurred that started the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War. Vietnam equals 84, like United States of America. Robert McNamara was the Secretary of Defense during that time, and he admitted years ago, before his death, that the Gulf of Tonkin was based entirely on false information. So think about that. We started the Vietnam War on entirely false information. The Vietnam War was the longest war before the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. The Iraq War surpassed the length of the Vietnam War, also based on false information, false intelligence. Remember, weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist. Biological chemical warfare labs that didn't exist. We started a war based on information that was entirely incorrect, entirely falsified, a gigantic lie. And we have a history of doing this from Iraq War to Vietnam to well before that, Truth Seeker. In Gematria, I want you to know this. Pearl Harbor equals 114. World War equals 114. Holocaust equals 114. Right now, we're living in the time of the 114th Congress, led by somebody named John Boehner. John Boehner equals 114. Truth Seeker, these number codings are the real deal. You learn to read the numbers behind the words, you will have a better idea about the truth of this world. I kid you not. So anyway, think about this. The Gulf of Tonkin was on this 106th meridian, this false flag that started a very long war, a very unnecessary war. Here in the United States, it cuts right through the heart of the country, right through Texas, where everyone's panicked about Jade Helm upcoming. But True Seeker, what this really got me thinking about once I saw Gulf of Tonkin is it made me think about my original blog post. I started this written blog, which is now turned into numerology, gematria, and everything I present on October 24th, 2013. And when I did this blog post, True Seeker, I didn't know a thing about numerology. I didn't know a thing about gematria. Well, I knew a tiny bit about numerology, but I had no idea that there was such a thing as coding numbers into words. It was information that did not exist when I started this blog. But what I was looking at this time, notice I even have Charleston here mapped out. What I was looking at is that in popular fiction, written books, movies, TV shows, even docudramas being put out by things such as the National Heritage Foundation, they were foreshadowing an awful event in the Carolinas. Newt Gingrich even wrote a book about something awful happening in the Carolinas. And so I thought, this is really strange. All this popular fiction about a disaster in the Carolinas that creates a national crisis. And so in my research, I started to theorize that maybe the next September 11th will take place in the Carolinas. There's a lot of good reason to think so based on all the popular fiction being put out about it. And in the time I was doing this research, I learned about something that I had no idea about prior. It was a movie that came out March 20th, 1983. Exactly 187 days before I was born. March 20th, True Seeker, is the date that the Iraq War invasion began. From September 11th, 2001 to March 20th, 2003 is a span of exactly 555 days. 555. In Washington, D.C., the Washington Monument is 555 feet and 5 inches tall. It's across from the Pentagon, 5-sided, 5 floors above ground with a 5-acre court in the middle. 555. Think about how they put that in front of our face. My theory on what this means is new, as in New World Order, which is really an old world order. N is the 14th letter. 1 plus 4 becomes 5 for N. E is the 5th letter. W is the 23rd. 2 plus 3 becomes 5. So new breaks down to 555. Anyway, this movie released March 20th, 1983, Truth Seeker. Why is this creepy? Look at the date numerology of 3 plus 20 plus 83. It equals 106. And if you haven't seen this movie, what it's about, notice it came out the year after CNN launched. It's about a news network that's a lot like CNN, and they are covering a terrorist threat situation. A terrorist parks a boat in Charleston Harbor with nuclear bombs on board, demands a ransom, things go wrong, the nuke goes off, and the town of Charleston and the surrounding area is entirely wiped out. I also want to point out that March 20th is the 79th day of the year. This movie's about a mass murder. Murder has a gematria of 79. But what really creeps me out, Truth Seeker, is that it has a gematria of 106. Also, notice that they gave it a 5.1 out of 10 rating. The word conspiracy equals 51. So does Freemason with the S exception. Oh, man, Truth Seeker. So, what's interesting for me is I started this blog without any understanding of numerology or gematria. I just thought it was overwhelming how much popular fiction has been made about a disaster in the Carolinas causing a national event. And I think so many people who are awake are feeling something similar to what I'm feeling. That the powers that be have something very awful planned, possibly unprecedented, possibly something that will make September 11th look like a mosquito bite, essentially. And it wouldn't surprise me the least bit if the Carolinas did end up being the destination, or if it ends up being a multi-destination attack. Perhaps the Carolinas, California, the Midwest, and something else is all hit at once. But my point is, Truth Seeker, there is a reason they keep giving us these numbers in news stories, in movies. I talked about how Unbreakable ran 106 minutes. Well, Unstoppable, the more recent train crash movie, both movies released on dates with 33 numerology, both movies set in Pennsylvania, both movies with significant numbers. The Unstoppable movie's 98 minutes long, and again, 98's also connected to all these stories. Think about it. The movies, the news, and over the span of several decades. As it turns out, the movie from 1983 also has the same numbers coded into it. Think about it. It's 32 years later, Truth Seeker. Coding the same numbers shows you how well thought out this is, which supports my proof from the original post I made on this blog. In that same post, this one, I talked about how September 11th in the year 1968, that's the year MLK was assassinated, all these things happened in 1968. 911 was made the national emergency dialing code, World Trade Center construction began, and the movie Space Odyssey 2001 came out. I can't think how to spell Odyssey right now. There it is. Space Odyssey 2001, World Trade Center construction, 911 made the national emergency dialing code. Of course, 1968 is 33 years before 2001. And do you know what day the World Trade Center buildings opened? They opened on 4/4, April 4th, 5 years after the assassination of MLK in the year 1973. And True Seeker, one more thing about 9/11. Those buildings were on the 74th meridian. I call 74 the number of the martyr often. And if you followed my recent Carolina post, the number 74 is coded all over it. 74106. Like I said in the beginning, this natural pairing that also meets these coordinates, which syncs up with the Gulf of Tonkin, an incident once used to start a war. And then also, Truth Seeker, I bet a lot of you who've been following Truth for a number of years recall that about 2 years ago this time, there was a story put out by Alex Jones, who is a disinformation agent. But the story at that time was that nuclear bombs had been secretly transferred from Texas, where this meridian runs through, to the Carolinas. Do you remember this? So this story, this narrative began years ago. And now here it is, in a way, secretly coded through numbers that not many would ever pick up on. Maybe even no one besides myself, since I'm the only person in the world who seems to be teaching this, besides the people who've picked it up from this blog and are now also making videos of their own. But anyway, Truth Seeker, this is a legit conspiracy theory. I like to deal in the realm of conspiracy fact, which is what I think most of my videos are about. Here I'm presenting a conspiracy theory, but one that I really think we should think about based on our recent history, and also how I've been showing how all this stuff syncs up and is connected. They forecast a Philadelphia train crash through 2 movies prior. Perhaps they also forecast the bomb going off in South Carolina, North Carolina. And also, Truth Seeker, you should know something about me. I'm someone who's convinced that nuclear weapons might very well be a hoax. I could be wrong about that, but let me show you something. With regards to 74, look at the gematria of nuclear. Watch this. 74. Energy. Would you believe the gematria of energy, Truth Seeker? Right now my computer is moving awful slow. Energy. 74. Nuclear, energy, both 74 words. And check this out. Weapon. 74. For those of you who think every word sums to 74, it isn't so. It's just the really important words. And these people have thought this out and made very precise calculations. Out of the 50 states, only one sums to 74. Oregon, the 33rd state. The word warhead with Pythagorean gematria sums to 33. Nuclear warhead. They love to pair that 33-74, Truth Seeker. Science, spirituality, cultural events, geography. It's because we live in a world by Freemasons. They pride themselves on being the invisible architects of society. They are. They've created our language. They've created essentially everything we know. Like I always say, we live in their sandbox. So that's what I wanted to present, Truth Seeker. Notice the news network for this movie. You can watch Special Bulletin, this movie where the nuclear blast goes off in the Carolinas. The news is called RBS. RBS. Think about BS. The news is based on bullshit. They're trying to tell us this with their movies they create. RBS sums to 39, another number of great importance. 39 books in the Old Testament. Of course, Jews run the media. Also, in a movie that I've told everybody to watch, and I've done a video on it, the news network in that is called UBS. The movie network is one of the greatest movies ever. Notice that UBS sums to 42. What's special about 39 and 42? I'll show you. 39 sums to 142. 42 sums to 142. Just 39 and 42 sum to 142. Interested that they're coded as the networks with the acronym BS and the title in these 2 movies that are about similar things. Both movies have very much to do with terrorists. The word terrorist equals 142. We recently just had the USA Freedom Act passed, which was first proposed on May 22nd, the 142nd day of the year. It's a bill about fighting terrorism. Are you getting the joke, Truth Seeker? Remember the name Osama bin Laden equals 110. The World Trade Centers were 110 stories tall, proposed by Rockefeller. The Rockefeller family, the name Rockefeller equals 110. Before Osama bin Laden, the worst man in the world in the United States of America was Adolf Hitler, equals 110, born on the 110th day of the year. All these people are considered to be terrorists. I mean, just look at the whole name, Adolf Hitler, Truth Seeker. 303 in Jewish gematria, like 33. Nazis equals 33. Came to power in 33. Berlin equals 33. It's all just part of a very well-calculated, sick joke that we're living in. Anyway, with regards to Osama bin Laden, and part of the hoax of a nation we live in, we then get the rhyming president, President Obama. And would you believe the gematria of President Obama, Truth Seeker? And make no mistake about it, no matter what you think about President Obama, he is a terrorist, by and large. This man has signed off on drone strikes. Can you imagine living in a country where our nation is actively bombing with drone strikes? Talk about terrorism. Also, Obama signed off on legislation saying that United States citizens can be assassinated when abroad if the federal government has deemed them to be terrorists. You know, that's a law in this land. If I want to go on vacation somewhere internationally and the United States has me on a checklist as a terrorist, they have the legal authority to assassinate me. President Obama signed off on it. Oh man, nothing but sheep live in this nation. It's crazy how many people still support Obama. RBS, UBS. The message is fuck you, truth seeker. That's what they want to really tell you. Fuck you with all these stories. I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that's what they're saying to you. So anyway, pass this information along. If you know people who live in Carolinas, Georgia, I would really be on alert. I don't know if that's the spot to be at this day and age. But then again, I don't think anywhere in this nation's that safe. The only way we can ever make this nation safe is by overthrowing the powers that be and restoring sanity. Because right now, that is something entirely missing from this nation. All right, Truth Seeker. Till next time, if you want to check out that movie, Special Bulletin, you can stream it on YouTube. It's been up there for 3 years. I don't think it's going anywhere else. All right, until next time. Truth Seeker, I forgot to make one important point. With regards to this recent church shooting, there was a lot of 43 coded into it. One of the victims, named Singleton, has this gematria of 43, matching the gematria of Pinckney, the senator who died. He died 43 days before turning 42, which matches Charleston, which matches massacre. And in this case, the shooter, Dylan Stormroof, is said to be born on April 3rd, 4-3. 4-3 is the 93rd day of the year, another very important number. It made me think about April 3rd next year. The date of 4-3-2016 happens to have a numerology of 43. So perhaps through this through the shooter's coded birthday and through the coding of all these other words that are very important to the story, it's foreshadowing something for this coming April 3rd, 2016. From the Pope's visit, a very important date that a lot of things seem to be measured by, including this church shooting, from that date to the coming April 3rd is a span of 1 month and 93 days, or 6 months and 11 days. Curious numbers. Again, April 3rd is the 93rd day of the year. And as so many people know, things like to come in threes. Charleston's had to deal with the Walter Scott shooting tragedy, now the church shooting tragedy, a tragedy to a bigger tragedy. Imagine a citywide tragedy. I'm not saying it necessarily will be a nuclear bomb, but perhaps through all this hinting, foreshadowing, they're trying to say that something very big and tragic is coming to the Carolinas, which, as I pointed out, is something that I was documenting well before I understood numerology and gematria. There was just enough evidence with what's been put out there in popular fiction. So those are the final points, Truth Seeker. Let's hope I'm wrong. Until next time.